Welcome back, everyone. This is CCP Fozzie, joined by Sir Squeebles, and our next match is CVA versus Red Alliance, two of the oldest alliances in the game. These guys have been everywhere in EVE history, and we've got two really exciting setups, actually, that are quite different than what we've seen before. CVA bringing a mostly Amarian setup, mostly Candid, in fact, triple Damnation, triple Sacrilege, double Maulus, double Tormentor, and then double Inquisitors as the remote rep Logi frigates.
And on the other side, we have Red Alliance, who is fielding Typhoons and two Sleipnirs. So two Typhoons, two Sleipnirs, a Basilisk for reps, and then a really healthy Caldari Frig contingent. This is a really interesting match on multiple levels. There's so much EHP on the CVA side. And on the Red Alliance side, there is definitely a fair amount of DPS. These Typhoons, interestingly, have come in at 0, so they're ready to brawl. These are not Kite Typhoons like we've seen in the past. But the real question is, who do you primary in a fleet of Sacrileges and Damnations? Where does your damage go?
Yeah, I mean, if you can manage to kill off the Logi frigs fast, maybe with the Worms, that'll be a good call. The Sleipnirs with autocannons can also deal damage to frigs pretty effectively. But if they get Transversal up, then it gets pretty tough. But after that, yeah, it's tough. Damnation, Sacrileges all have really, really strong tanks. And they'll be dealing a decent amount of damage, actually, with heavy assault missiles.
And as opposed to some more top-heavy setups that we've seen, things like in the past, Fleet Typhoon setups, Vindicator rushes, where you have almost all of your damage tied up in just a handful of ships, even the Rattlesnake comps, to be fair. This CVA team, I mean, their DPS is really distributed. You're not going to slow the advance of these Sacrileges and Damnations over the course of the match.
So as the match began, most of the CVA team actually pulled directly away from Red Alliance, except for one Sacrilege that is charged directly into the fray. We're going to have to see how it does. That is the primary for CVA. They've all decided to shoot at the Sacrilege, potentially a bait Sacrilege. This might be the one that is fit with more tank than the others.
You've also got Car Velsox in a Damnation, stayed pretty much where he started, and now you've got JEN also in a Sacrilege burning in. So it looks like, yes, they did definitely want to direct that damage onto a single Sacrilege so that their other guys could have a little bit of maneuvering space to get in on these Foons. And quite frankly, once these Typhoons are tackled, they've got to be the primary.
Yeah, the Sacrilege is holding on pretty well. He's got a bunch of rep drones around him. Meanwhile, the Logi frigates are helping him out and helping out a Tormentor as well. And it looks like the primary for CVA is going to be a Sleipnir. That's an interesting choice. A lot more resistances and potentially less damage than the Typhoons.
And he will probably have an XLASB that we see on most Sleipnirs, Logi or not. The Typhoons will as well, but as you said, the resist profile means that every little bit of rep that lands on this Sleipnir of Van Dam from this Basilisk is going to count for so much more on that T2 resisted hull as opposed to a Typhoon.
Yeah, so CVA's tank is holding together fine, but they're not killing anything right now. What they need to do is take down that Basilisk. As I say that, we're seeing some big chunks of damage taken out of the shields of the Basilisk. He's being hit by target painter. He is not webbed yet, though, so it's going to be pretty easy for him to get up to speed.
Well, he's about to be, because there's at least 3 CVA members who are closing in on him now. It's only a matter of time before he waves goodbye, and there it goes, just as I say it. And so now what they've got to do is they've got to limit DPS. Hopefully they can maybe pair a Sacrilege on each of the Sleipnirs to isolate their DPS out of optimal, and then allow these Damnations and the remaining Sacrilege to close in on the Typhoons and clean up.
Yeah, I mean, the Sacrileges have shown that they can tank everything that that Red Alliance can throw at them. Red Alliance seems to still be going after Ground Zero Sacrilege. They've got 2 Typhoons sitting right on top of them. I'm not seeing any smart bombs from the Typhoons. This would be the kind of time where a smart bomb would be incredibly helpful on this Typhoon, because he'd be able to kill off a bunch of rep drones.
Right. Okay, now given this match based on how it looks like it's going to go, if you have a Typhoon comp, do you just go ahead and delete that from your repertoire? Because it's not paying off for these Typhoons, and it's always for different reasons, it seems. Damps is the one killer, but man, this CVA comp, this is a target caller's worst nightmare, this comp.
Yeah, it is. It is really hard to figure out. They're switching now to Ice Gorilla's Damnation, who knows if that's going to help? Again, Damnations, of course, have one of the biggest tanks in the entire game. These Typhoons are very different than the Typhoons we've seen in previous matches, but yeah, they're still not doing the job. This time, they're not very vulnerable to damps because they come in at close range and use rapid heavy launchers, but they still are not actually breaking through these Damnation Sacrileges.
Well, to be fair though, this the Red Alliance team is definitely applying better to this Damnation. But when you're using rapid heavies, of course, they have that reload time, and if you can't burst through the tank of a ship, and you hit that reload, you're really just sort of stuck in a bad spot for that reload timer. And it looks like that's exactly the case here with this Damnation as he tanks through.
Yeah, he's just got that huge hit point bonus as well as the big resist, and now he's pulling back some armor as there's no longer missiles coming in at him off of the Typhoons. And meanwhile, the Sleipnir of Unuk there for Red Alliance is taking quite a lot of damage, and he's boosting with his ASB, but that's not going to last him forever.
And yeah, I agree with somebody in the Twitch chat, the sentiment that your heart sort of sinks as soon as you hear the target caller say the Damnation is primary. Hope kind of goes out the window at that juncture, and this team definitely reminds me of a team that we faced in the past. Actually, I believe it was in the Neo, where a team puts forward so much EHP that it really skews your decision making. Typically, they're high damage targets, as we've seen in the past with things like Gilas, even Sleipnirs, that you can say, hey, look, if we can eliminate this off the field, we can lower the incoming damage, and that buys us time. But when you're talking about 3 Sacrileges, 3 Damnations, you just, I guess you say a Hail Mary, and you just pick one at that juncture.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually see on the lower half of your screen there, we've got 3 different bars that represent the different strengths of the teams. The defense bar, the attack bar, and the control bar. The defense bar has 2 sections, one that represents the total effective hit points, and then the outer one represents how much remote rep and local rep they have. The defense bar for CVA is actually just off the edge of the bar. We don't show the whole thing in this case because it is off of our measuring charts, and that means it's going to be very, very difficult to get very many kills. They do have a Tormentor down, but that's not a ship that is crucial by any means to CVA's team. And meanwhile, this Typhoon of Leetman, the captain for Red Alliance, is about to explode.
And a case could be made that the Worm support from Red Alliance would have made a big impact there had they applied properly to the Tormentors and the Inquisitors. You are going to see links on these Damnations, though, which a lot of people would scoff initially at the idea of using a 2 frigate Logi in a 12v12 scenario. There's so much DPS, it doesn't seem like it would work. But the huge benefit of Sig Tank and the resist profile with Damnation links, it's a pretty brutal amount of tank, and even though that Tormentor did go down, it's really, really impressive to see this frigate wing tank these worms, because again, these worms are putting out a lot of damage, and while I don't think they would have turned the fight, it certainly would have changed the feel of the fight if they would have cleaned the CVA frig wing off the field very early.
Yes, it means this is definitely a more impressive looking frig wing from Red Alliance, and yet we were seeing Worms and Merlins getting killed by these Tormentors. Tech 1 frigates that are outnumbered in this fight, but with the backup of the Logifrigs, were able to win the day.
And now at this point, if you're a member of the Red Alliance team, you're just praying that CVA has fit micro jump drives, or that they try to use the mobile micro jump drives, as historically those have not panned out. And given that doesn't take place, I think it's a pretty convincing victory from CVA, and I think it'll give some teams things to think about. This is the first team we've seen that fielded command ships with this much tank. Typically, the command ships have been paired with T1 hulls like EOS and Vexers, which have a lot of synergy, but there's an obvious tank differential, and here not so much. And you would initially think maybe the DPS suffered for fielding this sort of a comp, but clearly not the case, as they've just wiped the field, and they're going to take down these 2 Sleipnirs pretty comfortably in time.
And of course, for CVA, I'm sure it's especially nice to be getting a win with a setup that almost completely uses Amarian ships. For anyone that's not familiar with them, CVA is one of the oldest alliances in the game, and they are built around the loyalty to the Amarian Empire. That is their identity in the game. That is the role that they play in the game. And to have this win be done with ships that are generally less popular in the tournament. We don't see a ton of Amarian ships in the last couple of years of tournaments, but CVA obviously knows that there's a way to use them very effectively.
Right, and my hat's off to CVA here. This is really impressive. It's a very cool setup to see, and it worked exactly as intended. That nobody dropped below like 50% armor. So really cool setup, and more importantly than just how effective this setup is, I want to see what other teams field to counter this setup. I think that should be a really good match if they have the opportunity to fly this again to see what the other teams bring.
And that is the end of the match as the last Sleipnir goes down for Red Alliance. That is a victory for CVA, who'll be moving on to the winner's bracket. Red Alliance will be knocked down to our elimination bracket, and we'll be facing elimination next weekend. And we'll send you back for some ads, and then be back very soon for Outbreak versus Monkeys with Guns.
Alliance. This is a Caldari Navy announcement. Can the pilot that has left their ammunition in a couple of cans near the Alliance Tournament camera, can they please proceed at all speed to collect the cans and remove the offending trash from the local space system? A failure to comply with this directive will result in excessive fines against the offending pilots. Thank you for visiting Gita. Have a pleasant day.
I'd like to make an amendment to that announcement. I think they'd actually be removed from real life if they don't. I want to say, Gita always looks like this. This is always what's going on in Gita. This is what marketing gameplay in EVE Online actually looks like.
Yes, this is a true story. Like, this is exactly what it is. Although we're actually going to lie a little bit and just annoy everybody who's been busy getting themselves positioned.
You will, no. What? It has now come to pass that CCP Logibro, he might be able to do good things with a logistics ship. He's not so good at finding pleasant viewpoints.
Well, come on.
Consider this corrected. There we go. I have taken control, and we now again have something beautiful. See, there's an obelisk.
And literally the only reason why I can't move it mouse again is because CCP Gargan is holding me away from the computer with his long arms.
While we work through some difficulties that have presented themselves, we decided to sit down again and, well, caress you with our beautiful voices.
Yes, this is a thing we do because we love you.
I myself and CCP Gargant. Wow.
yourself and you.
So, thrice introduced, I am CCP Gargant, joined here
by CCP Logibro.
My good friend CCP Logibro, who from now on is not allowed to control the camera.
Damn it, just let me have another go, just one more try.
I want to say, I almost want to start a vote, but because I'm not a voting kind of guy, I'm more of a benevolent dictator.
Yeah.
I'm more of I rule by an iron yet caring fist.
You're not the Eisenfaust. That belongs to CCP Phantom.
CCP Phantom is the Eisenfaust. Yes, that's true. I still want it to be known that the obelisk is the most.
The Stone Fist. You can be the Stone Fist. That suits Iceland.
The
you
obelisk.
Just dipped your hand into a volcano and out came a horribly charred Stone Fist.
While you talk about something completely irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
The English language is something that I apparently wrestle with. And while I wrestle with the English language, I want to say that the obelisk is the most beautiful freighter of all of them.
Yes, although I do know a number of people who would argue with you that the Providence is most beautiful, but I agree with you.
I am bigger than most of them, so...
Yes, they are wrong. This we have established.
See? Oh, what do we have?
We have a Providence, an obelisk, and an ark.
This is unprecedented display of beauty.
And look, there's another Providence.
Okay.
It's just like a wild flock of freighters just strolling around Gita.
That never happens. Freighters never frequent Gita.
No. Nonsense.
I would say that this show of voting has actually overthrown me from my dictatorship stool.
Well, to be fair, there's another obelisk in the background.
And you guys have made it clear that you guys like Amar better. Just like CVA just demonstrated.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Like those sacrileges, that damnation, you're rubbing off on me in the worst possible way, CCP Gargan. No, but yeah, those Amarian ships, Kahanid ships actually.
Yes.
Kahanid ships were just rolled all over Red Alliance in a display of missile firepower.
Missile?
Missile.
Oh.
It's a sacrilege and it's a damnation. They use missiles. Well, the damnations also use drones, but...
I prefer lasers.
Well, they had a couple of lasers on the Tormentors.
So life in Gita usually revolves around undocking, finding a gate,